Hoping to bring his friend group closer together, Pete invites both Harry and Nico to his home so they can get to know each other a little better. But their clashing personalities prove to make that a little difficult, especially when Pete leaves them alone to do some Spider-Manning. So he heads to Oscorp to find that it has been broken into by the vigilante known as Daredevil, and I have to admit that I absolutely loved this scene. I mean, I was always a fan of seeing Spider-Man interacting with Daredevil, so this entire sequence definitely provided my brain with a healthy amount of dopamine. Throw in the fact that Daredevil was voiced by Charlie Cox, that the Netflix theme was playing throughout the sequence, and that the scene did manage to move the plot forward a bit, and you got what may be one of the best and most memorable sequences of the entire show. But there were plenty of more Marvel cameos that were sprinkled throughout the new batch of Spider-Man episodes, and I found each and every one of them to be absolutely delightful. Now, I won't spoil all of the cameos here, but I will say that they really made me wish that Sony would just give the rights to Spider-Man back to Marvel, because I would really love to see more of these characters interacting with each other. At any rate, Daredevil ends the fight by telling Spider-Man that Norman is hiding something sinister, and when Peter eventually confronts Norman about that, he places all of the blame on his former associate Otto Octavius. And that has to be a bunch of bullshit, right? I mean, sure, Otto has been supplying criminals with advanced tech and weaponry, and maybe he has been doing that in order to steal something from Osborn, but that doesn't mean that Norman isn't hiding something of his own. But Peter returns home to find that Harry accidentally told Nico about his identity as Spider-Man, which puts a serious wedge into their friendship since Peter is supposed to be her best friend. So she storms out of his home and begins ignoring Peter at school, and that puts a lot of weight on Peter's shoulders to try and make things right with her. But the poor kid could not catch a break in any of these episodes, as shit just kept getting from bad to worse for him, to the point where a third person finding out his secret identity so early on in his superhero career turned out to be one of the least of his worries. So Harry takes Nico out for food in an attempt to get her to forgive Peter, and while Nico is initially hesitant, she finally begins to bond with Harry after he teaches her how to drive, which was definitely nice to see. But I couldn't help but to notice that Nico kept touching and even talking to her necklace in these episodes, so I wonder if she's gonna turn out to have some superpowers of her own. And some Spidey fans may know the answer to that already, but since this is the first story that I've ever seen her character in, her development is going to be a complete surprise to me. But while all of this stuff is going on with Peter and his friends, Lonnie is kicked off of the football team since he continues to skip practice and school. And even though his girlfriend Pearl tries to reach out to him to show him that she cares, Lonnie refuses to tell her about his involvement with the gang. However, since he knows that Lonnie is essentially throwing his life away, his little brother Andre decides to tell Pearl about what's going on himself. This causes Pearl to confront Lonnie at the 110th Street hideout, where Lonnie only doubles down on staying involved with the gang. Pearl's timing couldn't have been worse though, since the hideout is attacked by the one and only Scorpion. And I have to admit that I genuinely loved everything about this sequence, because since we never followed up with Matt Gargan's character from within the MCU, this version of the character was really able to shine on his own, and I thought he was absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. He comes in and he just murders someone right out of the gate, immediately turning the tone of this episode into something far more darker than I was expecting. And even when Spider-Man eventually comes to save the day, he gets his ass fucking handed to him. Which, considering how fun and lighthearted the series has been up to this point, definitely caught me way off guard. But in a good way, since the scene allowed the series to take on a surprisingly dark and serious tone. And that doesn't take away from how fun and silly the rest of the series actually is, but the scene did allow the show to get a bit more adult and mature for a second. Like, Peter was literally on the verge of dying, and seconds before he was actually killed, Norman sent in his glider to rescue him. Which was awesome, because it showed our first indication that this version of Norman will eventually transform into the Green Goblin. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that transformation, especially after he gave Peter some truly awful advice. Because Peter is truly shaken after losing his fight with the Scorpion, and instead of just comforting the poor boy, he offers him a fucking ultimatum, saying that if Pete doesn't step up and stop holding back his strength, he's going to end his partnership with Spider-Man. And he justifies saying something so awful by stating that with great power comes great respect, which I'm pretty sure is not the lesson that Peter is supposed to learn. But I don't know who's going to teach him about great responsibility now that he's already heard a terribly distorted version of the line. Hopefully Aunt May won't have to do it, cause I don't think I could handle seeing Peter losing Aunt May again, especially after seeing this Pete breaking down and totally losing it in front of May. This kid's got a stressful life, so hopefully Nico will forgive him and talk to him again, because this version of Pete could definitely use a break. But watching Peter trying to do the right thing even in spite of all of his hardships is what makes him such a compelling character in the first place. So I can't deny that I was completely blown away by these past couple of episodes. The tone really caught me by surprise, and the story being told was undeniably compelling. So I want to see how Pete intends to make things right with Nico. I want to see what Norman Osborn has been hiding for the entire season. I want to see who Lonnie is going to become now that Pearl has broken up with him. And I want to see how Spider-Man is finally going to look when he dons his classic and iconic red and blue suit. So I can't wait to see the last 2 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man once they get released on Wednesday.